A couple of years ago, I was at a presentation in the industry, and they were really talking about what it costs to have an employee. And I thought it was a real interesting twist, so I put together a presentation to help my students understand that, when you ask, how much does it cost to have you as an employee, they just usually think about their salary, and they think about, maybe the health benefits, a few other things. But there's a lot more than that. So this is a presentation that I put together specifically for my students, but I thought it was something that's worthwhile sharing. So again, how valuable are you as an employee to your company? It's all about the cost and benefits. Businesses work on ROI, and an ROI on an employee's salary is what this is all about. So let me move through this and try to make sense of this for you. Planning for your future, and you need to understand that this is really what somebody needs to be thinking about when they're determining their career and how they're going to advance. And most people would like to make more money in the next year, and understanding what you need to do that. What does it cost to have someone as an employee? Well, again, as I mentioned, most people think of the salary and the benefits, and there's health insurance, life insurance, and not all companies do all of these things. Really depends on the size and type of the company. Disability insurance, vacation and holidays, and retirement plans. Most of the bigger companies have sick days, maternity leave, educational assistance, professional development, and these are all things, but these are the normal benefits that most people think about. But yet it goes a little bit past that. They're also going to be paying taxes for you. Yes, you have to pay your share of taxes. You pay certain things out of your paycheck. You have Social Security. Different things come out. But the employers also, on top of your salary, they're paying unemployment taxes. They're paying state unemployment taxes, Social Security taxes. They're paying workman's compensation. They're paying Medicare, paying into Medicare. And the account costs to process these records. I mean, somebody's got to process these records, so they have to have employees that are going to do that they wouldn't have to have if they didn't have other employees. For ever so many number of people, they have to have people that work in the HR department to keep these things up and keep them going. And that's part of what it costs to have an employee. And people don't think about that usually, that's part of the cost of you working there. If we keep going, what people not think about? Office space, square footage, and overhead. Heating and cooling. Every day I go into my office in the summer, I am so thankful that I work for a company or a organization, Clemson University, that actually heats and cools, heats it in the winter, cools it in the summer. I'm not a type of person that I don't want to work outdoor all the time. And I can't imagine if you went back 100 years and they didn't have these things, what it was like around here. So the reality is there is a cost to that. And the 10 by 10 office that I have, okay, if they didn't have me as an employee, they wouldn't have that expense. So it's the cost of me being there. The computer that I use, the software, and all sorts of other tools that I might have in my office to do my job. But those are all expenses that when you add another employee, that's another expense that comes along. And certainly with a computer, you have to replace it on a regular basis. Software has to get upgraded on a regular basis. Internet access. Boy, most people take for granted how fast internet is at work or at school, and then you go home and you have to pay for it, and you see the big difference between what you get. And we take a lot of that for granted in today's world. Your cell phone, if you have that, or if you have a desk phone. Maybe you have both. Maybe they cover part of your cell phone. Maybe they don't. But if they do, that's huge. Maybe they cover the plan, but you buy the phone. It'll take time. So, with salespeople or certain executives, you also get a car. And they're also paying insurance on that. So there's a lot of things that are going on that people don't think about. Company events, Christmas party, company picnic. I mean, everybody wants to be involved, have those type of things. But when you think about it, and when you do something like a company picnic or the Christmas party, the reality is you're bringing your spouse, your kids, or boyfriends, girlfriends, and all that starts to add up. I mean, you have 150 employees, and you have 600, 700 people show up at the company picnic, and you're planning activities. Those are all extra expenses, part of what it is to keep the morale, keep people going, keep people interested in being part of the company. Expense accounts. So, if somebody's traveling around the country, they're going to conferences, going to trade show, whether they're trying to get trained or whether they're just trying to stay up to date, whether they're doing research equipment. But those are all other expenses of having you. Yes, it's an expense of a business, but it's an expense that it's there because you're an employee and you're doing certain things, and you have to think about those things. Memberships in trade associations, it's a great thing for everybody to be involved in. It can help your career along. It can help make contacts. There's all sorts of benefits, but those are costs that come into play as well. Magazines and journals. The costs associated with just hiring somebody. For everybody that gets hired, they've probably interviewed 3 or 4 people and even maybe paid for their airfare, paid for support, took them out to dinner. There could be testing that goes along with a new employee. It could be profile testing. It could be drug testing, all those other things. And those are all expenses that the people just don't think about. The management costs. If you have a supervisor that is supervising a dozen people, the supervisor isn't generating revenue specifically by making a product. The supervisor is making sure everybody else is doing what's supposed to happen. So the reality on that is that 1/12 of that supervisor's salary has to be generated by that employee. Then you have the person over that supervisor, the plant manager, and then you have the CEO, you have all the VPs, and all of those people. The cost of the management is a little bit of the burden goes to every single employee and divided by the employee because it's a cost of doing business. If you get more employees, you have more management, you've got more people to keep it working right. So a little bit of that is the cost of what it takes to be an employee. Recruitment costs, I've already mentioned that you as far as the interview, but there's the ad cost, time spent away from work for the management or anybody that's interviewing, the cost of reference checks, cost of any screening, drug screening, and then any other testing that might be done. So these are all things that are going to take place and people need to pay attention to. If we keep going, what do you want the company to cover? So here's another aspect that people aren't thinking about. Your salary, do you want them to cover your salary when business drops off? So there's the economy goes down, and we really had a vision of this in 2009. There were a lot of companies that used a lot of their reserve to keep their employees going when they didn't have business to do it. I know a couple of companies that went in and used all their reserves up. Then they went back and said to their employees, listen, we don't have enough business. We've got a choice. We either lay off 10% of you or everybody takes a 10% cut in hours, which means we're going to pay a little bit less too, but they still got all their health benefits, got everything else, but they were just trying to manage to get through it. But a company needs to be making enough money to put money in the reserves to make sure that when they have a rainy day or business slows down that they can keep going, and yet a lot of people don't think about that. Investing in the company's infrastructure. You want to make sure that your company is continuing to grow, that your company has stays competitive and everything goes together. And every single person needs to be generating enough revenue to allow the company to do that. So again, what does it cost to have an employee to keep the company moving and moving forward? And the company does want to make a profit. And a lot of times that's maybe people aren't as aware of that or they don't think about it. But what do they do with that profit too? They may be making a donation to a charity. They may be supporting all sorts of things in the community so that their company is being a community partner. They got to make enough money to do that. And again, every single person is literally contributing to that, and that becomes the burden of having you as an employee. The bottom line is the overall cost, and I did a lot of research on this after I heard that presentation, and this is across all industries, and it's not working perfect, but it's the average cost that an employee needs to generate 2.7 times their salary to cover the cost of them being an employee. Way more than the average person thinks. Now again, somebody that's a receptionist, they're not going to be generating obviously any money, but that's part of the idea is that it still costs money to have that person as an employee. And then think about a salesperson. Okay, they're generating more revenue from the standpoint that they're on the front lines recruiting capital. But the reality is that when you average it out, this is what you're looking at in the average sense. In the print industry, you also have the employee ratio to gross revenue is typically between 150,000 to 200,000. And some really, really good, very, very good productivity focused companies, it's actually $250,000 per employee. But if you just sort of go in that range, if a company makes $3 million, you'd expect that there'd be 15 to 20 employees, just so you sort of keep track of those numbers. So it keeps going up, and it's been that way. It's been changing, but with automation and all the things that we're working on in the production area of the company with presses and JDF and bindery systems and all the things employing the benefit of the automation that can take place to set up machines faster, that numbers continues to go up. It also is the same thing in the management side of it. With an MIS system, it allows estimates to take place faster. So there's automation that's taking place in all different aspects. So I think this number is going to continue to rise, and people need to understand that this is what a company needs to be able to do to survive. Just a few thoughts, something to think about. Hopefully it gives you a different perspective, and maybe you think about your job a little bit and also what you're doing for the company. Appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you again.